recording. And we have just a few people who have arrived. I'm going to go ahead and pause. Go ahead and put that in the chat if you want to. I know that I am interviewing George about courage because courage is something I need on a daily basis. Thank you, Tracy. And I do believe what I focus on, I get more of. I could have called this a conversation about fear, an interview about fear. And obviously I didn't do that. I decided to focus it where I think it's important for people to focus. I think you can go ahead and chat. I am a little bit anxious about Zoom bombing. Hopefully, I know everybody right now on the call. Thank you, Natalia. And George, I wanted to ask you about courage in your own life. If there's been a point in your life, I think of you as a very courageous person. Let me ask you that. Do you think of yourself as a courageous person?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that courage is what others observe of us, because I think it's relative, of course. You know, everybody has aspects of their life where they wish for more courage, because while we're still here, we deal with this, going between love and fear, we might say. Yeah. So yeah.
You mean here on the earth? You mean here on the planet?
Yeah, here in this life where we are tested on a daily basis. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think of courage. I had a number of questions for you initially, and I really focused on courage. Your work in authentic marketing, in particular, you focus on joyful productivity, which personally I don't have a problem with, and I teach. And then you focus on authentic marketing, which often scares the crap out of me. And I had been, for about a year, a number of people know, I've been studying a different business model, a high ticket business model. And it really was good for me. It pushed me out into the world in a whole new way. Terrifying. And I had developed quite a crust, quite an armor. And that was the last thing I needed. And I found your work through someone on LinkedIn, Brandon Bennett, who just invited me to have a conversation with him. And I thought, why would we do that? What's the purpose? And I came to that conversation really guarded, and I didn't know it. And he said, you say you're a hermit, which is definitely something I say I am. Do you ever think you might want a feedback loop? And he told me about your Master Heart group and just told me about you. And I'm like, well, I probably don't need anything more. I think I was feeling pretty maxed by that point. I was still really in a state of some disarray, I'll put it politely. But I started looking into your work, and I don't have a PhD for nothing. I study like mad. Like I didn't even have a kid for 10 years until I studied the idea of having a kid. It's, for me, study and research are very important. They actually are actionable. I'm not just totally in my head. And I found your work and I breathed an enormous sigh of relief that I could be myself. And you might think, or one might think, you wouldn't, that would pull me back into my shell, but it didn't. It kept me, it's keeping me, because I haven't known you that long, it's keeping me at my edge, but it's keeping my heart open. And I think that's why I think of courage when I think of you. I know you went through a spiritual transformation. I studied that, I read more, and that's where it began to evolve for me, that I wanted to hear about courage. And I would love you to say whether courage did have any impact on you in that spiritual transformation? Was the spiritual transformation so strong that you didn't need courage to sort of shift? And I encourage you to describe your shift
Yeah, yeah.
to people.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that very
go
much.
for it. Yeah.
Thanks. And by the way, thanks to Tracy mentioned that she's not able to see me. I think you might need to make me a co-host in order for the focus view to show my video, something like that. But anyway, yeah. Oh, okay, great. Oh, thank you. I guess I'm co-host now. So hopefully folks, you can see me. If not, go ahead and chat below. But yeah, so in brief, my spiritual transformation completely destroyed my business model and made me start over in my business. That was 5 years into my business, where I had already created, a fair bit of success for a solopreneur. I think I was doing better financially, quote unquote, in terms of audience size compared to most of my peers. Yeah, 10,000 person email list. I had, well into the 6-figure business, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't aligned with my sense of what was really right and fulfilling for me, and what was right to my conscience, because I was using the mainstream marketing methods that I was taught, that I thought was the only way to do it. Even for spiritual people like us, we had to use the scarcity tactics and the manipulation and the hype and all that stuff, because marketing was supposed to be, I guess nobody said it this way, but I realize now as I'm speaking it out loud, marketing is supposed to be a means to an end. Marketing is a necessary evil that we'll have to engage with, so that we can finally do our real work with our clients, our purposeful work. We just have to do the dirty marketing, just get it out of the way, and so that people can find us, notice us, and then work with us. And then they'll see how wonderful and spiritual we are, even though we weren't that spiritual in our marketing. So I thought that was how you were supposed to do, because all the mainstream teachers were teaching marketing away and doing marketing to me, right? In a way that I'm like, I could feel myself being seduced, into certain things. And anyway, so then I thought, but the spiritual shift, it really doesn't matter what school of thought or philosophy or religion or whatever I came across, because it could have been anything that aligned with my sense of truth with a capital T within myself. And it was the sense of, wait a moment, there is the core question became this: what if I only had 6 months left to live? And like I said, any spiritual philosophy could raise that question for oneself and say, if I have a very limited time left to live, how would I spend the rest of my life? How would I? And it wasn't to try to get rich and use marketing as a means to an end in order to, finally do the real work or whatever. It was, I would want every day and every word to be aligned with service to, the divine, within, within the world, within others, within myself. It would be a service to truth and to love, and nothing else would matter. So I think courage happens when we have a worthy vision, a vision that feels worthy to us, so worthy that we're willing to run into a burning building for that vision. Or we're willing to run into battle for that cause. That's so important to us, that we're willing to surrender to the possibility of death.
Wow. Okay. And you didn't have a terminal illness. You weren't diagnosed with a terminal
Thankfully
illness.
not.
No.
Thankfully not. And you know, we all have a terminal illness.
Right. You're right. We
Actually.
do. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm thinking, is part of what you're saying that you have to be willing to run into that burning building in order to have the courage to be authentic? Does it? It sounds hard. It sounds really hard when you say that. And my experience of using your work is that it's like falling off a log. But I mean, I've been practicing for many years, putting myself out into the world. So it was this like magic thing that happened to me. I still think I want to share your work with a lot of people because I love it so much. It's so simple. You're very generous in giving a lot of it away. Your writing is all free. And your courses, I can attest, are very affordable. Does it have to be, can it be incremental? Can it, that's always really important to me with my people, is you don't have to give up your entire life over here to do to follow your calling, to do this thing. Tell me about incremental.
I love that. Yeah, it absolutely can and can be a gentle path.
Okay, we'll say,
Thank
can
you
you say any more?
Yeah. No,
Okay,
we don't.
good.
We don't
Please
have
say
to.
more.
We don't have to. You know, run into battle not having trained.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
we can start with smaller battles. We can start with the trainings that build up our muscles essentially, and learn how to use the weapons of truth and love and
Okay, hold on.
weapons.
The metaphor is getting away from us. Flip it, because I know you come from love. Like really, you are an experience of love. It's quite something. So wait, let's pause for a second. It's not a battle. It's maybe it's like in Sufism, the inner jihad is to, the inner struggle is with the self.
Right.
Let's reposition it. So
yeah,
the struggle is with the self to be more and more loving. The training is to build the loving muscle. And I mean, I almost want to say, why is it so hard? But I want to let you go back to what you're saying, but just the whole battle metaphor was like, wait, that's not George.
I feel like the archetype of the warrior versus the warrior, the warrior, you know, is the representative of courage, right? I think courage is to me about, you know, I almost want to say reckless abandon in a way. You know, you almost have to abandon your ego essentially, right?
Yes.
Like you have to abandon the current comfort zone to say there is a possibility of pain.
Of course.
You know,
possibility of pain, for sure.
Possibility of pain and possibility of death. You know, eventually, I mean, in a small way. I mean, again, if we took the gentle way, there is small deaths along the way to before the bigger, you know, bigger and bigger deaths that you know, that then perhaps, you know, I think we would both agree, we realize there is no death.
There is no death.
There was just a door.
There was just a door. It's funny how we're really going very, very deep. I agree with you. And I guess I'm anticipating, and this must be a part of myself that feels frightened. And I want to address that part that feels frightened. Can we not be successful in your way of thinking if we're not willing to die? And I mean, in Sufism, and I don't want to make myself sound like a great big Sufi. I love Sufism. We say, you know, die before you die. And it's also something in Islam, of course. Dying before you die. So it's true that the ego gets in the way.
It's in other, you know, philosophies and religions too.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. When we have to let love, again. It's true. Letting love be bigger than fear. And I think if we continue to push out the stops of the fear and let love be bigger than fear, courage comes from the word for heart. We know that, right? The etymology of courage is the heart. In French, you know, and that's my other language, courage. It's always about the heart. So what allows us, and again, I'm really interested in incremental everything. What allows us to get there in your experience, in your client's experience, anything at all?
Yeah. I appreciate that you bring forth this idea of love, because I think ultimately it is love that draws us forth. in a way. And it's also love that provides the foundation for us to be courageous enough, to have a heart big enough to be willing to face the possibility of pain,
and ego death,
ego
and the
death,
risk of
and
failure.
yeah,
Absolutely, the
yes,
risk of
it's
failure. Of course.
embarrassment, rejection from those we thought we would love us,
Mhm.
would support us all the
Mhm.
way. And so let's get a little practical here.
This is
In our
practical,
world,
but yeah,
yeah,
in a
totally.
different way. Yeah,
In
sure.
our world where most of, maybe all of you who are here with us, are growing your community online.
Mhm.
I know some of you are also growing your community physically, locally,
Mhm.
but if you are able and willing to grow your community online as well, your audience online, what that means is your potential audience is so vast. There are what, 5 billion people, close to 5 billion with a B,
Mm.
online internet users, right? And if you just call forth any social media platform, let's say Facebook is nearing 3 billion monthly users, meaning there are almost 3 billion people on the internet, on earth, who are logging into Facebook at least once a month.
It's terrifying.
Right. And most of them, more than 2 billion, are logging in every day, right?
2
So
billion
in other
people.
words, of course, none of us can none of us can currently hold the space for even 2 million people, right? At once. I mean, we can grow to that eventually, perhaps, with more and more courage. But the fact is, out of just even say 3 billion Facebook users, there are so many pockets of people, so many different ways of thinking, and demographics, and interests, that's the blessing of the online age, is that no matter how much of a freak I am, there is a community there for me.
Do you feel like saying more about that, George? Do you really? I mean, I do, to some extent, identify as a freak. Do you identify as a freak?
Yes.
That's
I
really
and
interesting. I've never
and
heard you say that.
yeah, I know. I have rarely ever said that. But I think if each of us, and I think each of us here
Mm,
feels in some way that we've been longing for a community of people who really understand us.
absolutely.
We long for a group, a tribe, whatever you want to call it, a family, um, of people who see us, really match with our energy signature.
Mm,
We long for our soul group,
mhm.
and they're here.
Beautiful.
They're
Mhm.
here. Not all of them are here, but some of them are here. And it's possible to find them. And not all of them live locally to you, right? And probably
Mm-mm.
most of them don't live locally to you
Anymore.
anymore. And so I'm grateful that, because I had that spiritual shift that made me destroy my old business, I essentially removed 90+% of my email list. I unsubscribed them. I said
Goodbye.
goodbye. And I continue removing people, and meaning people who haven't opened my recent emails. I'm like, I don't need to clutter your inbox.
Is that how you partly decided? Is
Yeah,
because you knew who had been
yeah,
opening?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and
Mm-hmm.
then I said, I'm just going to experiment with what it's like to really say what I mean, to really say what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, using the tools of the online marketing, kind of social media and content distribution, I have over the past, so it's been 7 years since
7 years.
I shifted
It
my
seems so
business.
short. Uh-huh.
I know, right? It's so first 5 years I was doing the mainstream online internet marketing thing, and then I started over, and then it's been 7 years now
Mm-hmm.
where I've been speaking my truth. And Beth, it's been wonderful. I mean, it's
I
been
can imagine.
um
You
yeah,
make it
and
look wonderful, George. You really make it look wonderful.
Thank you. And it's
It's beautiful.
and guess what? It gets easier.
Mhm.
It gets easier. Well, you know what? I'm not going to say that. I don't think it gets easier. I think we get stronger.
That's interesting. I think that structurally it gets easier. You've developed structures. I'm a huge fan of structure. I'm
Yes,
very
that's
woo-woo
true.
and I'm a big fan of structure. And you develop a structure and you work it and work it and work it and it serves you. And you
Yeah.
may tweak it, but it does serve you. So
But
in some ways it
I
does
guess
get easier, but we do get stronger.
we do get stronger. I
Amen.
think in a
Yep.
way, what I mean when I say it doesn't get easier is that as our audience grows, there is more and more possibility of embarrassment. It's true,
Love it.
right? Like
Yeah,
when I
that's
had
right.
first when I started over, maybe I had a few fans who followed me from the old world or the old style, and who
Mm,
said, "No, George, we always knew there was something deeper that you could bring
mm.
forth rather than this other stuff you were doing, and so we're going to keep following you forth." And so there were a few people who did, and because of those few people, love provided the foundation to experiment. You know, and which is why I so value the community you're building with your presence,
Mm.
because it is love that you are providing for your people to then try, to then experiment in smaller ways, to say, well, let me try this. And not the fact that it's an experiment means not, it often doesn't work, or sometimes it won't work. You can't
Sometimes it won't
expect
work.
all your experiments to be
No, it's
well.
not an experiment if it works all the time.
Right?
Actually, right,
Yeah.
right. In fundraising, which is one of the core experiences for me, we're taught that we should hear no 50% of the time, or we're actually not out there stretching and building the relationships we're
Wow.
supposed to be building.
Wow.
And you do, the other beautiful insight from fundraising, it reminds me of the flying nun. I don't know how old you are, but the flying nun, she could fly because load was less than drag. And in fundraising, your fear has to be less than your love. Your fear, however ginormous it is, to sit in front of someone and say, I'd like you to consider a gift of $10,000 or whatever, which is just like getting really naked in front of someone. Your craziness for that beloved community, your insane obsession with your cause it doesn't have to be a lot bigger, because your fear can be giant, but it has to be a little bit bigger. So when you say you want, the risk, the edge is people seeing you in your community and feeling a freak. You also have to be willing to be seen. And I'm wondering what helps you
100%.
be willing to be seen.
You're absolutely right. We have to be exposed. We have to be exposed to, of, like you said, our naked selves. Now, like I said, we don't have to take off all our clothes all at once.
That's a good point.
We could take
Our
off our jacket
spiritual, we
first.
don't have to take off all our clothes at once.
We could
That's
take off
right.
our sweater for no,
Sure,
but
sure. Get to know somebody. Yeah.
but the other thing is we have to be exposed to the feeling of being seen. Like we have to be
Ah.
exposed to the, again, metaphors here. We have to be exposed to the water, right? Like if we're gonna jump into the pool, we can either cannonball our way in and freeze and go, oh my God, that was traumatic, or we could dip our toe and go,
Mm,
oh, that was cold, but okay, let me come back a little bit. All right, let's now put in our foot. Oh,
nice. There we go. That's the
and then go.
incrementalism.
And
Can you give examples at all?
sure.
Okay,
Well,
great.
practically in terms of, let's say, a lot of us are wanting courage to share a message that may be controversial or more of ourselves, more vulnerable. Start with a smaller group of people who are supportive. You may have colleagues, you may have people within this community that Beth has created, that you could say, hey, can we support each other in being more courageous?
Mm,
And let's form a little collective. And it could be a simplest way, it could be a private secret Facebook group, let's say,
mhm,
where we're going to each commit to sharing something once a week that we're not quite sure we're ready to share publicly, but we're going to
mm,
share in this group with the confidentiality that's here that we all agree
mhm,
to, and with the commitment
mm,
to be unconditionally supportive of each other,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
to
mhm.
give ourselves that practice of exposure, that
The toe
practice of
dip.
exposing ourselves to
Mhm.
the feeling of being seen and that it was okay. Because
Mhm.
ultimately we have to normalize it.
The feeling within ourselves. We don't have to become normal. That's not what you're saying.
No, no,
God
no.
forbid we should
That,
become normal.
no.
What should become normal is the feeling of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, to be naked. Okay.
Yes.
What's the next step? Okay, we're in our comfort zone. We've gotten comfortable with our small buddy group. And again, from experience or from your client's experience, what would be
the next step could be to staying with Facebook as the platform here, because it's so easy to talk about these things. The next step could be to then share one of the messages we posted in our little buddy group that got especially more hell yeses. We share that
Test it.
to our Facebook friends. You know how you post on Facebook on your own
Sure.
personal timeline, you could set the privacy to friends only. Share it to our Facebook friends, because now we're sharing it with people who might be or are definitely outside that buddy group, and some of whom might not be, but it's not the whole world. Yeah.
Right. And on LinkedIn, I'm a huge fan. LinkedIn is nice and stodgy and slow. And that's such a mean thing to say, but like I'm kind of stodgy on social media. I'm definitely a late adopter of just about everything. And you can also set settings on LinkedIn. I don't do Instagram personally. I question Facebook. I know you've really asked people not to leave social media in your latest work. But would be maybe in your group on LinkedIn, or find a group anywhere. And just test speaking your truth, because your point is that then you find out who that draws to you.
Yes. You find, yes, exactly. When you show up with your authentic, energy signature, you draw forth your soul group, essentially.
Your energy signature, people who respond
you draw
to
forth your soul
signature.
group, and bit by bit, over time, you build this community of people who really get you, and who just, it's like you can't do any wrong in their eyes. And that's become like that for me. And it's not that you can never do wrong in their eyes.
You shouldn't,
but it gives you courage. So one example is I recently made that video and that blog post where I was very authentic, and I was very strong on a message that is controversial even within my own group of people. I have a lot of holistic practitioners in my group, and just a lot of people who want to live an ethical life. And a lot of those people are very anti-Facebook, or has become increasingly anti-Facebook over the years. And I get it. I understand. Of course I understand. The democracy, the effects on teenagers and kids, and all the stuff you can complain about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and all that. Of course, I understand. But then I made a strong stand to say, no, we should stay on Facebook and complain about Facebook, but just do it on Facebook as well as everywhere else. Don't leave.
That's great.
Anyway, so that's an example of, and some people disagree with me, and some of my favorite supporters.
And that doesn't suddenly make them, one disagreement, even a fundamental disagreement, doesn't make them not your people.
Yeah. And I'm sure a couple people say, George, maybe I am done with you, and that's okay. And that's the thing, and that's one of the messages. It's okay to lose people.
It's totally okay to lose people. It's whenever I make a transformation in my life, I lose friends and I gain friends. I know it's the half hour, and I don't want to take your time.
Oh, I don't have a hard stop. That's okay.
If you're okay, I'm fine, and just delighted to keep talking for a few minutes. Right, losing friends is no problem. Boy, I just had an encounter with a soul colleague that is considering buying a new coaching package, and they were saying something, and I just thought, okay, it's time for the come to Jesus moment. And I said what I needed to say, and it was made so much easier, because I thought, either I can say this and we're going to move forward, or I say this and it's going to be really clear that this is the end of the road for us. And it was okay, and it turned out beautifully. And more I'm getting that sense. But it's fine if people don't agree with us. If our love, again, is bigger than our fear, and it's really developing like a muscle, like a love muscle, receiving that love, and it's divine love. It's not any one human being. My dear sweetie is on this call, and I'm super grateful that he's on this call, but he can't provide that, right? I learned finally at I don't know what age, finally, that no human being's job is to be God for me, to fund my love, the store of love.
Wow. Yeah,
It's
that's
not.
beautifully said. Yes. Thank you. And thank you for sharing about that experience. That's one of the scariest things to do,
It
is
is
to lose.
scary.
It's
It is
one thing to
scary.
lose quote unquote fans, people who
Yeah.
might unsubscribe or unfollow, but it's another thing to lose someone closer than that, or someone that we're a little bit more intimate with. And yeah, so thank you for your courage, really,
Thanks.
in saying what you felt needed to be said.
I absolutely, I thought this is what I have to offer this person. We're over time, and what's thrilling about that is I feel a little more freedom. And Tracy has really been helpful this evening, as well as many other times in my life. And she's asking, how do you do marketing with love? Is it just the spirit you bring to any medium? And one thing, just real quick, I would say is that you show how to do it, George. And so I do recommend, that's why I put your website on, like everything to do with this event.
So
But what
grateful.
else do you have a
Yeah.
response?
I
Do you thoughtful
yeah, I
thought for
think
her?
that love for love, I mean, love is for all, which includes ourselves and
Mm,
includes the other. And so I think marketing with love um, is countercultural because much of how marketing is done, especially to us, service providers and holistic practitioners and spiritual business owners, much of the marketing that's done to us is not really of love.
no.
As we sense into the intention of it is very profit, almost entirely profit driven and numbers driven. And so because it's countercultural, we do need to kind of pause before we click send, or pause as
Mm,
we write and say,
mm,
how can I love includes trust, right? Like,
mhm.
how can I trust the other to make a decision in their own time? And
Wow.
and how can I trust the other to make a
Mm,
decision without me having to do so much persuading and
mhm.
like, but wait, there's more. No, you have to sign up for this because blah, blah. How can I love myself to give my business and love my business enough to give it the spaciousness that's needed to
Mm,
grow in its own time organically and not have to be successful now. Because if we put any kind of limitation on, it's great, let me be clear, it is great to have huge numbers goals.
mhm.
I applaud your desire to make $10 million a year or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care how your $1 billion. I don't care how big your numbers goals are, but it is fundamentally less loving if we say we have to make that money or six figures, whatever, in this small amount of time. Whatever time frame you give it, you're therefore limiting. You're squeezing. Anyway, a lot of love
There's
out
a
of it.
desperation. No, I'm recovering
Yeah,
from a phase just like that,
it's great to
feeling
have
that it
huge
had to
numbers.
happen at this time. And that was
Right.
part of the
It's
commitment.
it's
It's like,
great to have six
no,
figures, seven
wrong.
figures, whatever. Great. Just allow some spaciousness there and just say, well, let's be curious on
Right.
how this launch will go. And then we'll track it. Of course we should track it. And then let's make improvements each time to our launches and to our content and
Right.
just continue being in the curiosity mode and experimentation mode and always just experimenting with love by our side within our hearts. And as
Yeah.
we do that, we're going to naturally see, oh, this experimentation worked well. Why did this work well? Let's find out why that aligned with our market, and let's do more of that out of love.
And for me, I think the piece that needs to be said is that may mean working another job. That may mean that an income is coming in from something else, being organized enough and structured enough, because the mindset and the structure go together, that, like they were saying, that there's 9 to 5 and then there's your 5 to 9.
I remember. I'm. There's a Elizabeth Gilbert quote. Might be butchering it, but I think she said something. Eat, pray, love. She
I
she
love it.
she
Yeah.
she said something like, I made a commitment to my business, to my writing early on, that I would never force it. I would never force it to produce the income that I needed to
Oh
live.
my gosh.
I would never force it. I would allow the space. I would love it enough to allow the spaciousness for it to blossom on its right time.
Elizabeth
And
Gilbert,
so
who's like one of the
this,
most famous writers, and obviously living from her
so
writing at the moment.
she waited tables or whatever she did.
Oh my
You know,
God.
she
I didn't
waited
know that.
tables
That's a
until
wonderful
it
story.
worked. Until it worked. And anybody would be any business, any company would be so lucky to have any of us here, you know, working
True.
for them with love, while we love our business enough to let it grow, you know.
In very clear and specific ways, not sort of occasionally, not in a dilettantish way. It takes an enormous amount of discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is what you bring, right? You
It's
bring
one of my
lovingly.
things. And
You
one of the
bring
things I love
lovingly
about
to
you
the
too
people.
is okay, you know, mindset is great. Let's talk about structure.
Yes.
It's like, we can't not have that conversation. Are you disciplined, you know, or not? And yeah,
Beth,
anyway.
I just want to say thank you for the work that you do, the way that you do it. It's such a gift to your people, and I hope that more and
Thank
more
you.
people will
We'll
see
tune
that
in.
and do the work.
Actually, I just hope the right people will.
Yes.
I've sort of let go of numbers. It's really interesting. But yes, George, I just wanted a chance selfishly to talk to you and talk to you about courage and the heart and your journey. So thanks so much. Oh, hello, sweet peas. These little thank you notes are very darling. I think it's time to go, my loves. And thanks, George. I'm going to post the recording up. All right.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, George.